Welcome and Happy New Year, thinkers, to Season 3, Episode 10 of Thinking Critically. I hope you all had a lovely Christmas. Today's episode is business, and stick around to the end for a holiday gift from our guest. And today I'm joined by Neil from Paladin Roleplaying. Thank you ever so much for joining us today, Neil. Can you tell us a little bit about yourself?
Hi, so I've been role-playing for a pretty long time. Without giving away how old I am, I started with D&D as it was called then, of course, 2nd edition, and Warhammer Fantasy Roleplay 1st edition when that first came out. They were my introduction to role-playing world, and kept me going for many, many happy years. I guess, probably like a lot of people, at least of my generation, I think I kind of not entirely drifted out of it, but as I got older, a bit, just not quite seriously. Didn't have as much time. Real life comes along and all that boring stuff. You know how it is. And then sort of picked it up again a few years back, and in 2017, I'm pretty sure, I think that's right, I started Paladin Roleplaying, and we make dice and other accessories for role-playing games, and so I've been much more kind of involved in the, not just playing and running games, but much more kind of involved in the role-playing world and the industry, I guess, in the last 4 or 5 years or so.
Indeed, and I mean, I have a Paladin pencil here. I have my bag of holding downstairs, and that's the genesis of this discussion is from me, finding you guys online. I think I did back the Kickstarter. I do have the dice somewhere, but then again, I also have a lot of dice. So
don't we all?
So I did back the first Kickstarter you guys did, and that's way back, probably.
That's a while ago.
Yeah, not long after 2017, I imagine.
It probably was actually. Yeah, it probably was.
Yeah, and then picked up obviously these other few bits and bobs, and then I was like, let's get him on.
Good man.
Let's make it happen. So aptly, the topic of today's discussion is business. So what does that mean to you in the TTRPG framework?
Well, I think so. This probably goes without saying, but it may be worth saying anyway, that for me, starting a business in the role-playing world was an attempt to try and make a living doing something or being involved with something that I love doing. It's everyone's dream, right? You want to get the job as the famous footballer or the whatever singer, whatever it is you're into. And so I think as a small business owner, but doing something that I love, I'm trying to kind of get back to that. Almost, I don't know if this is quite the right way to put it, but I kind of think of that feudal sort of idea of where there's no distinction between work and play.
Yes.
And so that's, it doesn't always work out that way, needless to say, but that's the aim is. So I think my hope, anyway, my kind of dream for what business means to me is that it's not going to work, and then that's the bit you hate, and then you come home and you have and then you have fun, and then you have your nice off work time. Work and play separate. It's an attempt to make work also more like play.
That's the dream.
It is, isn't it?
And you don't know how pertinent this is, because literally I'm starting a new job next week here.
Oh, no way.
Which isn't quite that ideal, but it is in that direction. So it's big kudos for stepping out there and trying to achieve that thing. As you said, that's the golden goose, right? That's what everybody strives for.
Yeah.
So one question then about, like, although I am I've studied business studies throughout my academic life, so I'm aware of the academic side of business, but then in terms of like running a TTRPG business, are there anything specific to to the TTRPG space that would differentiate it from running, say, I don't know, like a McDonald's franchise. That's a crap example because one's a high street retail store that sells fast food, but but you know what I mean. Like,
yeah.
Anything specific for TTRPGs?
Well, I think, and you could probably say this about any business. I think you probably have to be a gamer, which obviously I am, to kind of understand the world. But I guess that's not unique to this space. Say the same for any business. But I think it's interesting. We're in a, this has been called, I'm sure you've heard this, people say this has been called the golden age for tabletop role-playing. Yeah. And I think that's right, actually. I don't think there's been a better time to be alive and be into tabletop role-playing. The growth of the area and the amount of creativity and the new games that are coming out all the time, and Kickstarter obviously has had a lot to do with that. And so what I think is happening though is that inevitably things are changing, because as it becomes more and more popular, and as an aside, I love now that our hobby is like, it's still a kind of nerdy, geeky kind of hobby, and it always will be, but it's kind of got a level of acceptability now, isn't it? Do you know what I mean?
Yeah.
And to the extent that I've had a new neighbour moved in literally like a month or so ago. And I met her for the first time, outside on the street, and you obviously say hello, and I happened to be wearing a Paladin Roleplaying hoodie at the time, and she sort of asked what I did, and I kind of, I gave her the sort of 2-line introduction, and always slightly, I can't help but feel slightly kind of, I don't know what's the word, like. Not apprehensive, but
you don't censor it, but it's tailored, shall we say, to her.
Yeah. And her reaction was, "Oh, cool, yeah, I played a bit of Dungeons and Dragons a couple of years ago, and I really want to play more." And I think for you to say that you're into role playing, and for someone to say "cool," is a thing now. That happens. We're not just the kind of ridiculous nerds
on the fringe
who just exactly. So. Anyway, I can't remember where I was going with that, but so it's growing. Anyway, I think it's growing, and more and more people are aware of the hobby and this kind of world. But I think that's going to change things, and I hope it's not for the worse. Particularly from a business point of view, as it gets bigger and bigger, and more money comes into play, that will inevitably change things. And now, we're in a situation now where there are TTRPG superstars. You've got, Matthew Mercer and the Critical
celebrities.
Role. Yeah. And fair enough, and I've got nothing against those guys, and Critical Role's great. But, they make and command big money. And so that means big sponsorships. And, you've got the sort of biggest companies, obviously being Wizards and Paizo. And they're growing. And I just hope that it doesn't all become more corporate and just more money oriented. That's my fear. That's like my worst case scenario. I don't think it is yet, and I hope it doesn't. But I think we're in a time of change, at least.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think one thing that's become clear since doing the show is that, that it's a transitionary period. I couldn't, maybe at the beginning, maybe approaching the middle, I'm not sure. But between talking to everybody from all walks of life and whatnot, there is definitely that sense I can definitely pick up from all these conversations that it's definitely a time of change. But one thing I wanted to add there, you were mentioning like how more mainstream it is and the resources available, and it was just making me think about, and I know there's a positive correlation between the two, but obviously like between technology. So like now if you want to change a tire or build your own PC, you can just Google it and see 5 billion YouTubes about how to do it. And
sure.
And my teenage nephews don't, I'm only in my 30s, and back in my day, I had to build my own computer and had to hope that the CPU would work with a mainboard. Whereas now you can just get someone to do it for you for pennies. But the same thing is for TTRPG. So I imagine back in the day, before my time, that it was a lot of a smaller niche fringe. Everything was hard copies and books, and you traded books, and you only had paper sheets. Whereas now, and maybe there were more TTRPGs, but obviously D&D is the biggest one. Whereas now it's like, if you don't like D&D, okay, we'll just Google and go on itch.io or Kickstarter, and there's 50 bazillion other role-playing games one of those is going to tick all your boxes. And it could be free, it could be £5, it could be whatever, and there could be a dedicated hardcore group of players out there that are dying to play with you. You don't know how to roll a character, here's an online generator. Don't know how to build an encounter, here's an online generator for you. It's like mad how easy it is just to pick up and play anything. Like it's for shame on me, for I have not really dipped my toe in those pools before. But now, if someone were to just Google, I want to play a role-playing game, they're laughing all the way to the bank.
Absolutely. And the thing is, for me, that the 50 gazillion games that aren't D&D, there's so much creativity in the TTRPG world, and there's just some people doing amazing stuff. And so it's, at least in my opinion, it's not the case that you've got the sort of, I don't know, 4 or 5 big games, maybe D&D, Pathfinder, Vampire, whatever.
Yeah.
And they're the only good ones, and all the rest are rubbish. That's not the case at all. No. Of those 50 gazillion games, most of them are really good. And for me, that's really exciting. That there's just this whole wealth of cool stuff to explore.
Yeah, absolutely. And then the other thing I wanted to mention there about it's a concern that you've highlighted to me now, and now I'm also concerned about it in terms of the commercialization, maybe, shall we say. And it's happening. Maybe I'm being naive, but there's always been an element there with video games, and certainly now with kind of like microtransactions and season passes and free to play and all that kind of stuff that has seen certainly to the like original fans has negatively impacted their experience of games, and it is purely because that's the way to make money nowadays is to offer these 30 quid a month for a season pass, or which I always find is weirdly ironic, because MMORPGs, obviously World of Warcraft being the D&D equivalent, that was mad back in the day when I first started playing that, to pay 12 quid a month for a
right. And
subscription.
people were really reluctant, weren't they? Like, I'm not paying that.
And then so that was fine, and then it got really popular, so everyone was like, oh, okay, I guess this is normal. But then it got out of fashion again, because people were like, well, Eve at the time was free, and there's other ones that are free, and why would you pay that? And then now suddenly everyone's paying for season passes every month again.
Right.
Let's just keep going around in circles. So yeah, that and obviously a new one now is, I think both COD and Battlefield are getting not a lot of love from the fans, because they're like, this is just a lazy cash grab at this point, just to get people to pay for XP boosts and whatnot. And it's a shame for the fans, because they're their franchises, and they don't like to see them.
Yeah, absolutely, of course.
Turned into these cash cows, devoid of any class or character. So I think it was right for you to say, like, that's definitely a path that could happen, because it's, I think, unfortunately, a natural outcome of capitalism.
I think the one thing that we do have massively in our favour is that to play a role-playing game, or tabletop role-playing game specifically, all you need is a book and probably some dice, maybe not even dice, but you've probably got them anyway. And so it's a very low barrier to entry. It's very cheap. In fact, you don't even need a physical book. You can get a PDF most of the time.
Yeah.
And so it also makes it quite easy for a creator, or maybe someone who's not even a creator yet, but just someone with an idea, to write something down and, like you say, put it on itch or Kickstart it or whatever. And so I think it's quite accessible. And so I think there'll always be that grassroots creator where, not everyone can sit down on their own and write a video game. It's just, the skills needed are way beyond most people. But after you've played a certain number of tabletop role-playing games, you could actually think, I've got a cool idea, and just do it. And so I think hopefully that kind of grassroots thing of people doing their own stuff, and at the simplest level, you've got the likes of the kind of one-page games.
Yes. Yeah.
Like Grant Howitt has put out absolutely tons of them, all with very silly names like Sexy Battle Wizards. I can't think of any others now. But yeah.
You remembered the best one, so.
Yeah, exactly, yeah. In Sexy Battle Wizards, you have 3 stats, which are sexy, battle, and wizard.
Okay, yeah,
and
good.
That's basically it, and the whole game's on one piece of paper. It's great.
I was going to say, like, along with everybody, that low barrier to entry, as you said, there's also the simplistic side of things, and maybe simplistic is doing it a disservice. The concise side of things, where people are just like, I want to have a role-playing experience, but I don't want to read a 300-page handbook, which is more than fair enough.
Sure. And I mean, that feeds into this eternal discussion that we role players love to have about crunch and whether crunch is good or bad, and the merits of more so-called realistic kind of games that go for verisimilitude, like I don't know, Pathfinder or something, where there's tons of tables and tons of rules, and then the newer kind of breed of storytelling games with very, very little rules. And I like somewhere in the middle.
Yeah,
but that's but I appreciate that's completely personal taste, and there's fans of both sides, aren't there?
Yeah, for sure. So what is 2017? You said you started the Paladin Roleplaying. Do you have any, I guess, lessons learned from that experience? I would assume the answer is yes, of course, because it's quite a risky, potentially stressful endeavor. So, what did you learn from that experience? Any pitfalls you didn't see? Like, wow, making dice was way harder than I anticipated. Whoops.
Well, I mean, I'm pleased to say I don't think I made any dramatic errors. Of course, I made lots and lots of kind of small errors. There's the whole thing about starting your own business, which is nothing to do with what the business does, but just and there's all kinds of stuff. Is either you have to know about, or find out about, or pay someone to know about accountancy and marketing and bookkeeping and taxes and all that very dull stuff, which is which was a big, very steep learning curve for me, because I didn't know about most of those things. I'm still having a massive headache with taxes, particularly international taxes and shipping, especially since Brexit.
Yeah,
it's an enormous nightmare. But it's I kind of see that as like the sort of the cost of entry in a way. That's just stuff I've got to do, because otherwise I can't do the good stuff, which is getting dice into people's tables. So there's all that kind of stuff. I think for me, this might sound odd, but I think when I started, I almost sort of tried to be too professional, if that makes any sense at all. And what I mean is, what I discovered is that it's actually much better for me just to be myself. And so I'm very much the face of Paladin Roleplaying. And that's kind of deliberate, because I want Paladin to be a company that people know has real people behind it. And that means that they know they can come and talk to us. And they do. And that's great. So whether that's good or bad, people write to me and say how much they're enjoying using their new dice or whatever. And then we maybe get chatting about what game they play and stuff like that. And that's a really nice, fun, kind of enjoyable interaction that makes my day a bit nicer. And then equally, and probably more important in a way, is if people aren't happy for any reason, they also feel like they can get in touch and talk to a real person, because they can. And then I do whatever I can to sort out the problem. And I think that's much better. And so to start with, I almost felt like, well, I'm just me. I'm just some bloke, and I should have this very professional, almost, I suppose, talking about not wanting things to get corporate. I was almost thinking, right, what's the company like? And it's all about the logo, and do you know what I mean? Yeah. And I thought, that's what I need to do. That's the professional thing to do.
I need like a customer service department who are staffed 24/7 and
yeah, all of that, exactly. And actually, I don't. I think people appreciate the fact that we're a small family-run company, and they can talk to us, and so that's not really less professional. Professional is the wrong word to use, but I think I've learned that I don't need to project this sort of more corporate kind of image. And it's much nicer not to, actually, as well.
Well, I mean, hey, that's how we ended up talking today, because it's certainly working. Right. Whatever it is you're doing, it's certainly working, because I rolled the dice, if you'll pardon the phrase, and dropped you an email, and look at where we are today. So it's certainly working. Something you're doing something right.
Good, thank you. It may be only that, but it's something.
Okay, awesome, cool. It's have I ever thought about, I'm trying to rack my head. A couple of my close friends and I always used to joke, like, the four of us should, when we've all been like unhappy with our jobs at certain parts in our life, we've always been like, right, you can be the face of the company, you can do the maths, the accounting, you can do the marketing, but it's never really, we don't have a product, so which is usually 101.
Yeah, it kind of helps. Yeah.
So in terms of the stuff then that you do on Paladin, and this isn't like, just for the listeners' benefit, this isn't like a paid thing or whatever. I'm just generally, I have the products. I'm generally interested in business and running a business, and as you said, running a business in a hobby that you love or I love is super interesting. So I'm genuinely curious in terms of like the design of a couple of the products and maybe the dice and stuff. Is that all in house as well? Is that yourself? Is that friends and family?
So in terms of design, that's all totally in house, and mainly me, but with lots of input from friends, family, other people in the industry and whatever, and whoever's brain I can pick, basically. But yeah, design is all entirely in house. We come up with everything ourselves, and I do have probably at this point 2 or 3 really good graphic designers that I've used, who are just kind of freelance, but who I kind of go back to whenever we need graphics or mock-ups or whatever arty stuff. So because I'm not arty in that sense, but I've got, and again, this just kind of comes back to knowing the market, because I am in, I am the target market myself. So I kind of just like to make things that I really like, which are cool. And so, or which I can't get hold of, if I'm like, I really like some dice of this particular kind of design for a character I'm playing, let's say, and then I look around and I can't find any, then for me straight away, that's a signal, okay, this is interesting. Nobody seems to be doing this. Why don't I do that? Yeah, actually, some of our best or most popular things have come, and this again is part of people feeling that they can come and talk to us, have actually been customer requests. So, people sometimes email and say, I'd love it if you did whatever. Let me see if I can think of an example. So we do a pack of 10 red D4s for healing potions.
The health potion ones, yeah.
And that was not my idea. That was one of our customers who said, I'd love to do. And actually now they're very common. When we first came out with them, they weren't so kind of easy to get. I'm not saying that people are copying us by any means, but
no, of course not.
in any case, that's the way it works out. Yeah. So, yeah, and as soon as I got that message, I thought, well, of course, that's obviously a great idea. So we started doing that, and then they've been really popular. So I can't claim credit actually for everything.
This is where your house of cards comes falling down. It's like, actually, this set of dice and this bag and this thing is all actually other people.
Yeah.
You're just it's a pyramid scheme, Neil, you've made.
Yeah, that's right. Exactly. Damn.
This is actually an expose.
Yeah.
One parallel, actually, I wanted to say between obviously Paladin and Thinking Critically is that I get asked I get asked the question from a couple of guests that come on, and they say that, they're wanting to do their homework and do some preparation. They say, who are the kind of people that listen to your show? And maybe that's because they want to make sure they're talking about the right thing. Maybe they want to know, just who they're talking to. And now you've mentioned it, I just need to say, like, people like me, because for the exact same reason. That's why I did the show, because I was like, I don't know if there's anything like this, and I think it would be a good idea, and I'd listen to it. And so yeah, that's quite a nice little parallel there between the two. Of like, it's people like me.
Yeah, and I've always thought that's the best thing to do in business. You know, if there's something you're passionate about, and that you know, make things for people like you, and because then you've got an inbuilt quality control. If you love it, then other people like you will love it, and that's a lot easier than making things for people who aren't like you, and then you don't have then this kind of instinctive feeling for whether it's a great product, a good product, or a mediocre product, or even a terrible product, because you would never be the market for it anyway. So I think to me that's kind of a no-brainer in a way.
Yeah, and also to definitely bring us back to TTRPGs, another common thread that we've heard in the show is, you know, when you're running a game, run the game that you would want to play, or kind of, you know, set the game you would want to play in. And it's a similar theme of like, if you're, you know, obviously make sure everyone's having fun and whatnot, but those standards, you know, there's something to strive for, and it will work.
yeah, I agree completely. And if you're trying to cater to other people, and to the extent that you're not doing what you want to do, apart from anything else, you're just not going to enjoy it. And you know, I always like to kind of emphasize that the G in RPG is the most important bit. It's a game, and we're supposed to be having fun when we play. So if we're not, something's wrong there.
Yeah, absolutely. We mentioned it earlier on around Kickstarter. Now, this is this might be a surprise to some people, but I'm not. I could count on one hand the number of Kickstarters I've backed.
Okay.
One of which is yours.
Thank you.
Gloomhaven and Frosthaven are my other two.
Okay.
The board games, and then I think there are a couple of others. So I'm not. What I'm getting at is I'm not. It's. Oh God, I'm gonna sound super old now, but it's still a bit of a black box to me in terms of like how really it works. And like, obviously I get the idea you're funding something that may or may not happen and blah blah blah. But in terms of like, again, I'm just sounding like super boomer, but you know, it's still not quite the same as, you know, buying a product. So
yeah,
how was your experience of Kickstarter been from the other side of that coin? You know, from the other side of the screen. If you'll pardon the metaphor there.
Yeah, it's Kickstarter is a thing. So our first Kickstarter failed, actually.
Oh.
And learnt a massive amount from that. Well, in fact, technically it didn't fail because we cancelled it before it had a chance to. But it was clear that it was never going to reach its funding goal. And that was because of we just got the numbers wrong. So it's a while ago now, so I can't remember the exact details, but I think the idea was to have a whole new range of dice in lots of different colours, and because it was lots of different colours, then that meant the stretch goal had to be quite high so that we could make all of them. And what I never did, which is actually such a stupid thing with hindsight, is I never sat down and said, right, if the cost of a set of dice is X and the target to be funded is Y, how many sets of dice or how many backers do we need to hit the target? Which you'd have thought would be a pretty basic thing to do, but for some reason it never occurred to me. And it was just way too many. It was just far, far too many because we'd set the target just too high.
Yeah.
And particularly as a first-time creator on Kickstarter, this is something that people really look for. If you're on on your second, third, fourth, 10th, whatever, if you'd had multiple successful Kickstarters before, people are much more likely to back your project because you've got a proven history of delivery. And the sad thing is I don't think there's many, but there are Kickstarters that never deliver.
Yep.
And that's partly some of those, and I'd like to think most of those that don't deliver is just because something goes drastically wrong.
Yeah, it's a genuine reason.
Yeah, exactly. Never any ill intention. There are very, very small percentage, and I think it's tiny actually, but it does happen, of people who are just doing it as a scam. They have no intention of ever making anything, just take the money and run. But Kickstarter obviously are pretty good at detecting that and trying to stop it. And I don't think it happens much.
No.
But in any case, people are nervous of first-time creators.
Yes.
So it's much easier now in our last one that only just finished a couple of months ago. And that was our fourth in total, third successful one. We had a huge advantage because not only are there all our previous customers who found our stuff elsewhere, there's also all the previous people who backed the Kickstarter number 1 or number 2. So then straight away when you launch, you've got this sort of ready-made group of people who already know what you do and like it and just jump on board. And so you get this boost right at the beginning, and then that looks really good then to anyone else, because anyone else looks at it and goes, oh, look, this has only started 2 days ago and they've already got X amount.
Yeah.
And then you get the snowball effect. And that's really important that's super important for Kickstarter. If other people are backing it, then it looks good. And then other people think, oh, this is popular. Maybe I should get on board. So there's all these kind of things to think about. It's a bit of a headache. It's a lot of fun. I absolutely love doing Kickstarters, but it is so intense because you've got to be super involved as well. So I reply to every single comment, and we get, when a Kickstarter's running, normally get a lot of emails as well. And you're constantly, hopefully, hitting stretch goals. Then you have to update the project page every time to kind of reflect the new stretch goals and sending out updates to people. And it's a lot of work. And you're trying to, because things are coming in all the time because of different time zones around the world, you find yourself kind of staying up really late and kind of hitting refresh, just like hitting F5 because you're almost at a stretch goal and you think, I want to go to bed, but if I hit this stretch goal, I need to update the page, so I better wait. It's that kind of thing.
I have heard and seen people waiting and just hitting that F5 just to see if they hit the goal, and then the party poppers come out and
yeah, exactly. Yeah.
It must be quite an exhausting but exhilarating experience, I have to say, because I'm quite unique about that, like just watching the numbers come in. Wow, I couldn't have made it sound more dull when in fact it's probably super.
No, it is. It's super exciting, and the engagement is great. I love just chatting with people, and people get excited about the project and share it, and that's just really exciting and quite sort of humbling in a way. If you get a lot of people just really digging what you're doing, it's really, it just makes you think, oh, cool, that's, this was the right thing to do. And that's super nice. I love that.
Oh, amazing. That's lovely to hear as well.
I will say though, if you can, my advice is this is a bit against this, whatever the opposite of self-serving is a bit, but as someone who's not massively into Kickstarter, you will save yourself a lot of money if you don't ever become into Kickstarter. Because I've got the habit of checking Kickstarter pretty regularly, once a week at least, normally multiple times a week, just to see what everyone else is doing, so I kind of keep my eye on the ball for my own stuff. But then the problem is you keep seeing all this cool stuff, and so I have recently backed quite a lot of Kickstarters, which is great because it means I get lots of cool stuff through the post. But yeah, it doesn't do my bank balance much. So I think if my advice is stay off it while you can. Don't get hooked.
That should be the quote on your next Kickstarter.
Yeah.
The tagline. It's a sentiment that I've heard, on Twitter now, of people being like, I'm backing so many Kickstarters right now, I've lost count, and I think I'm inadvertently quite lucky in that I haven't fallen down that trap. I've just done a couple of, as a handful here and there, and have just kind of somehow it's slipped my millennial internet searching web of things I do on the daily. So no, I'm quite, I guess, lucky.
Good man.
The one thing I will mention is in terms of production. So again, my evidence is quite limited and anecdotal, but I know with both as I said, Gloomhaven and Frosthaven, which are again very heavyweight board games.
Yeah, sure.
There's a lot. It's like hundreds and hundreds of pieces, and printing and blah, blah, blah. So they're a big heavyweight. I get it, but in both of them, the production schedule is slipped, which I don't care about, because I know the lead time is like a year anyway. So I don't, what's another 6 months on a year?
Yeah, right, sure. You'll get it eventually.
Exactly. It doesn't really mean anything to me. But I don't know if you've had any experience with that kind of schedule slippage at all, or...
So far, so good, actually.
Okay.
I think, so particularly for Kickstarters, the way that we've done Kickstarters is a very specific, so it's just, for instance, it's just dice. The last one was a new range of sci-fi themed dice, and it was just that range of dice. And there were a couple of things, like there was a coin and some poker chips as add-ons.
I think I have the coin. Actually, I've got a coin somewhere. Yeah.
Yeah.
Sorry to interrupt.
I do like those coins. They're pretty nice, if I say so myself. And so, in a way, it's the opposite of your Gloomhaven. It's not thousands of different pieces of different kinds. And you don't need some minis and a rule book and a board and some cards and some, et cetera, et cetera. So that makes it way, way easier, because then I know we've just got to produce dice. That's all. And of course, sometimes things go wrong, or there's a hold up, or a fire, or flood, or it could be anything.
Yeah.
But rarely, and now I'm pleased to say, and I hope this trend continues, our Kickstarters so far have all been delivered on time.
Amazing.
One of them only just, but we did get the last package out when before the date that we said. So, so far so good. Although the next one, nobody knows about this yet.
Oh.
But the next one is going to be early next year.
Okay.
And it's not dice. It's going to be for some... I don't want to give away too much, but it's going to be card based. It's going to be something to do with cards.
Oh, I'm honoured and this is well exciting.
This is the world first. Nobody knows this yet. And it's going to be a D&D product, or a 5e product, I should say, because I'm not supposed to say D&D.
Very cool.
I'm really excited with it. I've been working on it for quite a while, so probably most of this year, to be honest.
Amazing.
And it's going to be ready. Basically, as soon as we've fulfilled the dice from the Kickstarter, they're just finished, because Kickstarter allow you to have, I think, up to 3 on the go, but I don't like that. I want to get one done. I want to completely fulfill it, make sure everyone's got their stuff, and then start the next one. I think that's kind of fairer, in a way. I don't think it's fair to ask someone for money for something new when they've given you money for something else and you haven't given it to them.
Yeah, they haven't received it yet. That
just seems, So early next year, watch this space.
Oh, absolutely. Yeah, that sounds awesome. Okay, very cool. I'm a bit rocked by that now. This is like this is a Thinking Critically exclusive. So you've caught me off guard. Usually I'm getting the guests off guard with any questions. So now I'm like, this is not fair. This isn't how this is supposed to happen. Okay, cool. So let's change gears a little bit then. So obviously we've talked a lot about kind of real world business, obviously Paladin Roleplaying and Kickstarter and all that kind of stuff. In terms of businesses in game, then, so we'll keep it kind of system agnostic at the moment. I don't know if you've got any experience with that, in any versions or systems or editions that you've played, any have involved that element of role playing, like the player characters running a shop or downtime activities or any of that kind of stuff. I don't know if you've had any of that experience, and if so, how did you find it?
Yeah, so I obviously, knowing that we were speaking this evening, I was thinking about this today particularly, and I was kind of trying to think, and I wanted to ask you actually as well if you know of any, but I was trying to think, first of all, are there any role-playing games where that's the focus actually? So rather than going into dungeons or whatever it is for that game, are there any games where the whole focus is on business or trade? And I couldn't come up with any. I don't know. Do you know of any?
Not off the top of my head. No. I know that they're in 5th edition. There are some, guidelines and rules that have been expanded upon in the later books around, as I said, downtime activities, and with some broad guidance on like, if the PCs do X for Y number of days, they'll earn Z gold.
Yeah.
And that's pretty much as deep as it gets.
Yeah, I'm the same. So as you say that, there's some stuff in 5e. My main game is Simbroom. by Free League, the Swedish company who are taking the world by storm at the moment, and rightly so because they're great. So I run Simbroom, and there's a little bit in there about. It's not really. It's kind of related. It's about sort of in the Game Master's Guide. There's a bit about running a domain, and a domain could be anything from a small farm to a town. So if you happen to own one or take one over or whatever, but that's it's like 3 or 4 pages, and it's not really given that much detail. And then I think there's some games where you're a trader. So like Traveller, for instance, the idea is you're a trader kind of buying and selling stuff across the galaxy. And the other one I could think of was Warhammer Fantasy Roleplaying, Woothrup.
Okay.
But in a way that's kind of implied in the books, but I'm not sure anyone actually plays, because in Woothrup you have a career, which is your class, but it is actually a career. So the famous one is rat catcher. You can be a rat catcher, or you could be a pilot, or a whatever. There's absolutely loads of them, and I think the idea, the sort of implication, is that you're not really an adventurer. You are a normal person with a job, and when you're not adventuring, you go back to your job, and that's mainly what you do. And so all your advances are based on your career. Which is a cool idea, and it's a lot of fun. It works really well, I think, on the whole. But they didn't really make anything of that. And I think in the latest edition of Warhammer is 4th edition, which came out, I think, last year, maybe a year before, something like that. And just like you said, they kind of have it as downtime, really. It's just some stuff happens in between sessions, and maybe you make some money. Or you can put your money in the bank to make sure nothing happens to it. It's just, which is all right. That's fine, but it's not really making the most of it. And I sort of wondered wouldn't it be quite good, I think, to have a game where actually that is what it was about. And so I don't know what you do. You run an inn or whatever. You have some kind of enterprise, and actually it's about managing all the trials and tribulations. And you could have random tables for what kind of people come in, and maybe there's a recession, or maybe there's a fire, or maybe your stock goes moldy, or
rival shops opening up across the street.
Exactly. Maybe or you could maybe send in. You could do a bit of industrial espionage. You could send someone in to spy on the competition. It could be quite fun, I think. But so far as I know, there's nothing like that. I'm sure there's at least one person listening to this going, "Yes, there is. Yes, there is."
Yes, yeah. For sure. Welcome to my life is people telling me, I'm knowing that I'm wrong. That actually does sound very. It could easily sound maybe dull, like spreadsheets and stuff, but I think it could very easily be super fun. Like if you keep it on that like for example, a problem I thought of just then was like your warehouse where your stock is gets raided by like bandits or whatever, and then you can easily tie that into like a more typical. Well, go and investigate the warehouse to track down these people that have stolen your goods, and you could kind of swing that in.
Ends up with a big fight. And...
back into a more traditional sense if that's what people are after, and then you can go back and be like, well, now I've got my goods, and I don't have to, eat rice, and bread for the next month because I got my goods off of those guys. No, for sure.
Yeah, I think it could be a lot of fun, and I think that I know there's definitely games where you have a base, and then you have to have enough money to run the base,
the
and
upkeep,
employ guards and all that, and then you can expand your base with extra kind of modules and things. And again, some of the Free League games do that quite well. I know that's in Forbidden Lands, for instance. And there's a few games that do that. And that kind of touches on it, I think, that you've got to make the money to spend to keep your base going. And maybe you've got a cash generating something in your base, potentially. But it's always, I think it's always kind of relegated to, as you say, downtime or just like a minor little bit of the game. And then you go off and do your big quest. And I think that's a kind of a shame in a way.
Yeah, for sure. And it's this talk has reminded me of there's a video game. It's like a JRPG, quite old now at this point. It's called is it Recetier? It's got a interesting name, and it's called Recetier: An Item Shop's Tale. And it is very like anime very JRPG, and the protagonist, who's like a teenage girl, she inherits an item shop like explicitly for adventurers, like other typical adventurers that come in, and she inherits it from, a late uncle or something like that. And the whole premise of the game is she goes dungeon delving to get resources that other adventurers need, and then you take it back to the shop and then you sell them. So in the day, it's like, where do I put, I put the really high value enticing goods in the window to bring adventurers in, and then on the shelves inside I put the other goods, and then every time someone comes in, you get to barter with them and haggle the price of this healing potion, or this 50 foot of hempen rope, or you find a really great like magical sword, slam that in the window for like a huge price tag, just to entice the punters. And then in the evening, you go dungeon delving again to restock the shelves and and so on and so on. So that is begging to be made.
That could easily be a tabletop game, couldn't it?
Yeah, for sure.
Exactly, you can do the exact same thing. In fact, I expect someone will at some point.
Trademark, copyright.
Yeah.
Get it out there, quick.
Yeah, this is a Thinking Critically Paladin production.
Perfect. But no, like absolutely, that totally fits your, again, that what we were just describing. Like, and in the day, you could have those disturbances and whatnot, and you could easily spin all the classic tropes. You could tie in backstories, you could tie in, everything you want. Dragons coming in, you could do anything you wanted, and it would still be weirdly grounded in a way, which would make it potentially more engaging, because it is grounded. It is like I got to feed, like I got to eat, like
yeah. And there's a very definite reason. Sometimes I don't have a problem with this, but I think in a lot of kind of traditional role playing games, you kind of go on the quest just because it's the quest.
Indeed.
And I'm going to go and clear this dungeon out of monsters and take the loot. Don't really know why, but it's fun, so that's what I'm going to do. But I quite like that idea of there's a real definite reason behind it, and having to fill up your shop.
Yeah, I wanted to also say that there is something to be said about, in fact, looking at my notes now, about, I've put here classes as professions, and I think that's something that 5e doesn't do. I mean, I guess you could tenuously link most of them to a quote-unquote career or a profession, but they are, first and foremost, which is from its roots, what I would define as a class rather than a profession. Like, nobody grows up and says, I want to be a fighter, or like nobody is a child and says, I want to be a rogue, I want to be a criminal.
yeah, right. Yeah.
I want to be somebody people can't trust, like
yeah, right.
Whereas, as you said, like with the Warhammer, that certainly sounds like even in the name alone, which speaks volumes, they are professions.
And I mean, even fighter, fighter's a very loose term, isn't it?
Indeed.
But why are you a fighter? Is it because you're a bodyguard or a professional boxer? You could put that kind of thing around it. I'm just picking up my copy of Warhammer here, which is right next to me. Here we go. So we've got soldier, squire, student, smuggler, servant, seer, rat catcher, road warden, scribe, pit fighter, pilot, physician, student. There's loads of them. I mean, some of them aren't actually professions. There's noble.
Oh, okay.
It's not really a career.
It's just like if you've got a silver spoon, then you don't need to work.
Yeah, I suppose that's it. Yeah, exactly. Minstrel is there, so I guess that's a bit like obviously a bard.
Yeah.
Herdsman. Hypnotist, even, believe
Amazing.
it or not. Fisherman, just... But I like that. I like the idea, well, I'm just a fisherman.
Yeah.
And I happen to have got involved in some crazy stuff, and now I'm going off on an adventure. But I think that, that says a lot about the difference between Warhammer and D&D, because Warhammer is much, at least it's intended as a much sort of grittier, I'm not going to say realistic, but a grittier, more grimdark kind of game. And D&D is inherently a bit more kind of heroic.
Yeah.
So it kind of fits for Warhammer that you're just average Joe, the fisherman, who gets involved in something, and you're not some mighty paladin or...
Yeah.
And personally, I quite like that.
No, I like it too, because I've struggled with that dissonance before. I like to make grounded and realistic characters, and I've struggled with, I am just a dude, but you can never be just somebody.
No.
you know, even at level 1 you have fantastical abilities that set you apart. So it makes it very hard. There is a dissonance there to be like, I want to be a guy, but I can't just be regular Joe because I can get hit loads or summon fire, you know, I can't just be a fisherman because that doesn't really make sense when I whip out a huge great sword that can decapitate people. Like, where have I picked that up when I've been sitting for 7 hours next to a lake? Like,
yeah, exactly.
Where have you managed to squeeze that in next to one of the most mundane, like, not to insult fishermen at all, but like,
no, yeah,
it can be quite sedentary.
yeah, absolutely, yeah.
It's like, how can I fit in these fantastical feats of? Well, I mean, you could be. And now I'm thinking about it, a fisherman wizard would make sense because you got an awful lot of time reading. You could read books.
That's true.
So
that would work. That would work. Yeah. Yeah, got a lot of patience.
So no, I agree. I do like that marriage a little bit more between classes and professions because it just makes that stepping stone for me a little bit easier from certainly the lower levels to be like, I was a random person, but now because of the adventures I've been on, I'm a fisherman plus savior of the universe.
Yeah, and I think it also helps. It gives you an instant in terms of role playing, because if you're, so I actually played a one shot of first edition Warhammer a few months back, and I chose to play the Ratcatcher because Ratcatchers are iconic in the Warhammer world, and so straight away, I feel like, well, I kind of know something about my character from a role-playing perspective because I'm a rat catcher, and so you can instantly imagine I'm probably pretty poor and I'm used to going down sewers and nasty places looking for rats. And the fact that the rat catcher comes with what's described as a small but vicious dog. So awesome. So I've also got a dog. I'm going to give him a name, and that's going to be fun for role-playing as well. I'm going to have him running off barking at things when we're trying to hide or whatever. That'll be fun.
Yep.
And so that's really nice as well, I think, that straight away you go, okay, cool, I've got an idea, or at least a springboard for what my character's going to be like, because he's got this profession, he's got this career, and that tells you something straight away, and I like that.
I think most of those you rattled off there have some bearing in, you know, there's an analogous career or profession in the real world that people can hook onto, whereas paladins don't exist. So for me to put myself in the mind of a paladin, I have to be like, what would it be like to smite my enemies? I don't.
What does a paladin do on a day-to-day basis when he's not smiting?
Yeah, exactly. Or like a druid. What would it be like to be an animorph and turn into a cat? I don't know. You know?
Yeah,
I probably wouldn't go dungeon delving. I'd go and get up to mischief and
yeah, right.
Do all sorts of other funky things.
Really annoy the DM by saying, actually, no, I don't fancy going down that dungeon that you've prepared. I'm just going to go and play tricks on the neighbours.
Yeah, exactly. Knock stuff off of their shelves because why not?
Yeah.
Is there anything you wanted to talk about that we might not have covered yet?
I don't think so. I guess I'd just say, just as a kind of a thing for anyone who's listening to this, who mainly plays D&D or, you know, just kind of sticks with the big games, it would just be, and this is not at all a self-serving thing because I'm not a games designer, but just that there's so much cool stuff out there, and, you know, running a small company that I hope anyway makes really good quality products. That's certainly our aim. There's a lot of cool producers and content creators out there, and so I think it's well worth supporting the smaller people and just kind of, you know, giving someone who's just starting out a few quid as a way of kind of giving them a boost. And I think that's good for the hobby as a whole, just to have more creative people doing awesome stuff. So just a little kind of request maybe to think about that.
It encourages that train of thought for those people. You know, it encourages that I can at least try and put myself out there, and people do somewhere are interested, and that just is a self-fulfilling machine because then other people want to try it, and so on and so on. And
exactly. Yeah,
you have the next big thing that hasn't happened yet.
Yeah, it just is waiting in the wings. Yeah.
Like a really cool discussion podcast, for example, or whatever. I don't know.
I hear there's a really good one going around. It's called something like critical something.
Yeah.
I'm not sure. Yeah.
Thank you for today's discussion. It has been really fun. I've had a lot of fun talking about business, which is,
Who'd have thought it?
I know some people might find that surprising.
Yeah, maybe this might be your lowest numbers episode because it's called business.
No.
Hopefully not.
Don't forget that we're nerds and people that listen into nerdy stuff.
Well, to anyone who's listened this far, thank you. I appreciate you.
Is there anything you would like to promote?
Well, of course, I would like to encourage anyone to check out Paladin Roleplaying for dice or any other accessories. Our range of other bits and pieces is also growing fast, and you can find us at paladinroleplaying.com. We're UK based, but we ship worldwide, so it doesn't matter where in the world you are. Aside from that, I mean, that's definitely the main way to kind of find out what we're doing and what I'm doing, and to get in touch. As I said, please do feel free to get in touch about anything, basically. It's always nice to hear from people. If there are any Simbroom players, I've got a couple of little pieces on the Free League Workshop, which is Free League's kind of fan publishing facility. So you can look me up on there. There's a little house rules thing and an adventure called The Summoning, which is a one-shot adventure. But Simbroom's not massive, so I'd be surprised if there's too many Simbroom players.
You say that,
GMs listening,
but you are not actually the first guest to mention it. And
am I not?
I think an episode. I think in this season, actually, someone else has mentioned it. So no, there's two of you.
Cool. Well, there's at least two of us then. That's good. It's my all-time favorite role-playing game. Actually, I love it.
Wow,
it's really good. But yeah, and of course, the Kickstarter coming next year. Keep your eyes on Kickstarter. If you're a D&D player, and who isn't, then yeah, check out early next year. Just check out the Kickstarter. We'll be obviously publicising it on our socials. Sure. We also have Facebook and Instagram if people are on that. To be honest, I'm not super active, but you can find us on there.
Yeah, that all that stuff will be in the episode description as normal. My question is, I'm on the mailing list and I have been for years. Is there a mailing list for you guys as well? So people, if they want to get that Kickstarter, they can get that in their inbox.
Yeah, that's probably the best way to do it. Actually, there is a mailing list, of course. Yes. Well, you know that because you're on it. And in fact, you can go to our site and then click on the Kickstarter tab. And at the moment, all it says is there'll be a Kickstarter soon. Why don't you stick your name down and we'll tell you when it happens.
Awesome. Cool.
That's the easiest way to get on the list. And yeah, we don't, I hope you agree that like everyone else, I hate spam. And so I'm really conscious that I don't want us to be spamming people. So we don't send a ton of emails. Basically, when we've got something exciting happening, we let you know. And then if you're not interested, we just leave you alone and don't badger you too much. That's the plan.
Yeah, no, not at all. I wouldn't have even noticed it, to be honest, in terms of as a nuisance or anything. So no, not at all. It's great. And as I said, I used it on Sunday. I had my bag of holding to take my laptop to my D&D game. Got my pen up here. As I said, my dice had lost somewhere in the big bag of other dice picked up over the years, so they're not quite as to hand. I will say. Oh, and I do have the coin. I'll grab it from my chest in a second. But yeah, so no, I do like that's a legit recommendation from me.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Oh, and actually, I would like to one other thing, which I always forget to plug. I don't know why, because I think it's one of the coolest things we do. We're just into about the middle of the second season of our Dice of the Month Club, which is our kind of luxury subscription service. And it only opens every 7 months. So it's currently closed, but it'll be opening again sort of early next year. I'm not sure exactly what the date is. And every month you get one of our luxury sets. So that'll be the metal or wood. And we might be including stone as an option for the next one. So you get one a month, so over 7 months you build your whole polyhedral set. And in addition to your one posh dice per month, you also get a random set of our standard dice, so one of our acrylic sets, and a free gift. And the free gifts are cool things that we managed to track down from other people and friends in the role-playing world. Sometimes it's our own stuff. but it's normally stuff we've sourced elsewhere, and it's been a lot of fun coming up with the free gifts, and people have been really, really liking them. So that is, if you're into your dice, and you like the idea of getting something once a month that's just cool and fun, then that might be a good thing to look into.
Awesome. Amazing. Well, all that's left to say is thank you ever so much again for today's discussion. It was hugely fun.
Thank you. I enjoyed it.
And as usual, to everybody at home, thank you all for listening. All the links, including the mailing list and dice subscriptions and all the other lovely stuff, will be in the episode description. I would encourage you to check it all out. But before we finish, Neil was kind enough to leave a parting gift. You can get 15% off your entire cart at paladinroleplaying.com when you use the code ThinkCrit15. That's ThinkCrit15. And now it's time for the Patreon shoutouts. Once again, thank you to Matt Street at mpstreet88 on Twitter for supporting the show. If you need support running your personal or business schedule, head to virtualtimehustle.com or on Instagram to make that difference between should do and done. Boss it better with support from Kat, who will help you get back that essential time you've been searching for. If you would like to support what we do and get 4 shoutouts a month, head over to patreon.com/thinkingcritically, or you can just buy me a coffee at ko-fi.com/thinkingcritically. Thank you all for listening, and good night.